My quilt tops are most often solid fabrics, and so I have a lot of fun picking the backing fabric, and I almost always go with a design or what is called directional fabric, which requires the pattern matching to create the backing piece. So you've cut the yardage that you purchased for your backing in half. So what you want to do first is lay them next to each other exactly how they were in the full piece of yardage. You can see here, this is actually not the selvage for this fabric, but I had cut it off, so I've just laid one here to demonstrate. You can see that the selvage with the information about the design, who designed it, what the name of it is, they're both on the left. The next step to prepare is to take your left side and we're going to create a straight edge. So I took the left piece that we had laid out and I created a straight edge this way. First thing that I did was find where I'm going to pattern match. If you look here where I've pinned, you can see this cute little koala bear, and he's facing that way and he's got these dots here, and that doesn't repeat until down here where you see again the same koala bear. I can see that these dots are the same and these are the same. And so this repeat on this fabric is about, what is that, 7 inches, 6-7 inches. So it repeats like that. And this is why I recommended that you buy extra yardage, a little extra yardage, though if you only bought 3 yards and your repeat isn't super big, you should be fine. To begin our pattern matching, the first step is create a 1/2 inch border and press it down to where we are going to pattern match. I've turned the piece that I'll be pressing, which was originally on the left side of our setup, onto its wrong side facing up so that I can create my 1/2 inch fold and press it. I use this tool from Clover. You don't have to have this, but it helps me to continue to make sure that my fold is on the 1/2 inch mark. And this is made of material that can handle the iron. But you can use your eye. Once you get a nice 1/2 inch, it's easy to just eyeball that. Or maybe you have this tool that you saw in one of my sewing videos, and this is a 1/2 inch, so I can continue to monitor how I'm doing on creating a 1/2 inch fold. Or use whatever ruler you've got to keep yourself on track. I am going to do that now, and I'll be back with a nice pressed edge. Here's my nice pressed edge, as close to 1/2 inch as I could get. I can see from the pins I had put in that I'll start pattern matching at this koala bear here. Now I'm using a much smaller sample so that this demonstration is easier to capture on video, but you will have an entire width of fabric going this way. And so when we go through the matching process, I want to illustrate that you're not going to have the top edges lining up, and that's absolutely fine and expected. Once we match our fabrics, we will secure them to each other with glue. This is Elmer's washable school glue, disappearing purple. Works really, really well for this. And we'll be using our iron, which we use to set the glue in place so that it stays nice and firmly in place. As you can see, I've slipped my wool ironing mat underneath where I'll be doing my pattern matching so that as I press the iron, it's hitting the mat, not the cutting board. You can also do this on your ironing board or a tabletop. Just make sure you've got an ironing pad underneath so that you're not burning anything. So the first step, we don't need these pins anymore because I can see exactly where I'm going to begin matching. To lay it in place. And I did this so that the edge of the koala's ear is easy to match up to the one underneath. And you can see here that's matching really nicely. You want to keep an eye on what's above and below the area that you're matching. So I'm really happy with that. And so I'm going to work in roughly 6 to 8 inch strips here to do my gluing. So I see that that's perfectly in place. So I'll bend that back. You'll be eyeing it again as you set it with the glue. The glue doesn't stick immediately, so you have a little room to play, a little time to put it in its place. So I just put glue along that pressed 1/2 inch edge, and I'm going to eye it again. Like I said, you don't have to rush. The Elmer's glue is not going to set until we put the iron on it. So when you press the iron, give it 10 or 15 seconds. That's going to dry the glue. When you wash your quilt, that glue is going to completely disappear. And you can see now that it's attached here and it's holding nice and firm, so that when we turn it over and sew the seam, everything will stay in place. So I'm going to work my way down, matching and gluing, pressing with the iron, and then I'll be back. I've glued all the way down the edge of my sample matching fabric here, and you may not even be able to see this very well, which is the whole point. I've matched pretty well there, and I'm very happy with that. Also know that if it's not exact all the way down the strip of fabric, that's totally fine. You won't even notice that when the quilt is done. For instance, if you can even see this dot is a little bit off, which is absolutely fine. No one will ever notice that when your quilt is done. So let's turn the fabric over and show you what it looks like on the other side. The back of your fabric will look something like this. Here's that extra edge that we are eventually not going to need because we pattern matched and this is where it brought us. You've got what was originally the right-hand piece is now face up, and this piece, which we glued, is face down. And it is secure right along that 1/2 inch. And here is the line that was the pressing line, and that's where we're going to sew as close as we can and accurately as we can along that line, so that when we open it up, it's going to be nicely matched. So I'm going to go over to my sewing machine and sew down that pressed crease. So I've sewn my seam. I used a slightly smaller stitch length just to make it that much more stable. So I used 1.8 on my machine. I stitched right down the crease. The next thing we'll want to do is pull apart this 1/2 inch piece that was glued, and it should come off really easily, even though it secured that fabric really nicely so that I could sew. It's also super easy to just pull apart. You'll see some of the glue residue as you pull. You will see that on this side, and I'll show you how we're going to make sure that gunk doesn't get on our iron. The next step will be to trim this waste off because we don't need it now. So you'll just line up your ruler. Obviously it should hit about 1/2 inch where that seam is. If it's ever so slightly off, it doesn't matter. This is the back seam of your backing fabric. So I've just lined it up along the edge of the piece that we glued, and I'll cut that off, and you're going to go down the entire length and do that. And now I've got this nice 1/2 inch seam that we're going to press open in the next step. I've cut away all that excess that we don't need, and when I flip this open, there is our seam. So the first thing I want to do is either you'll bring this over to your ironing board, or do what I do, which is slip my wool mat, now that I've cut, underneath there, and we're going to press this seam open. There is some glue that it's not sticky anymore because we had pressed it, but I don't want that glue as I'm ironing my seam open to come off on the bottom of my iron. So I just put a cotton, this is just a flour sack dish towel, but I put that over the seam so that if any glue were to come off, it's not gonna gunk up the bottom of my iron. And you're just gonna press that entire seam open. I've pressed that seam open with the cotton towel on top. And now this is where my seam is. And you can see that I've pattern matched my sweet little koala bears. Now on this side, this will be on the inside of your quilt sandwich, so even though there's a little bit of glue residue there, not only will it be inside the quilt sandwich, but the first time you wash it, that will completely disappear. So have fun pattern matching.